This is a detailed documentary on Saladin's first recorded major battle, which he fought under the leadership of his uncle Shirkuh. This was one of the battles that contributed to Saladin's unparalleled success as a military commander. This historical battle took place on 18th of March 1167 in a place called Al-Babain in Egypt. The story starts at 1163 when the Grand Vizier of the Fatimid Caliphate, Shawar, was dethroned and kicked out of Cairo by his rival Durgam. Shawar left Egypt and came to Syria, where he asked Nur ad-Din for help to reinstate his position in exchange for a third of Egypt's annual revenue. Nur ad-Din wasn't sure whether it was worth risking his army to displace Durgam from Cairo. But his friend, who happened to be Saladin's uncle, convinced Nur ad-Din that 1,000 men is all he needed to overthrow Durgam. 4 years later, Zengids were betrayed by Shawar, who promised to pay tribute for their support to help him reinstate his rank. But not only did he refuse to pay the amount he promised, but he also allied with Amalric of Jerusalem to kick the Zengid force out of Egypt. This betrayal was not going unnoticed by Nur ad-Din, as he hastened his preparations to launch an attack on Egypt, but this time not for any political reasons, but to conquer the rich state in its entirety. He assigned Asad ad-Din Shirkuh as the commander of his troops and Saladin as his uncle's advisor. This is what Saladin said about this expedition to Egypt. "I was the most unwilling of men to leave for Egypt on this occasion. It was not by my own choice that I left with my uncle." Saladin was never a power-thirsty maniac like most conquerors of his time and prior. Instead, he was more inclined towards gaining knowledge and cherished the gatherings of the most prominent Islamic scholars of his time. But he had no other choice. After trespassing the Crusader states on the way to Egypt, Shirkuh and Saladin finally reached there in 1167. When Shawar came to know of the invasion by the Zengid army, he quickly sought help from Amalric. Amalric prepared his battalion in Jerusalem and stormed towards Egypt. He had around 374 knights plus an unspecified number of mounted archers, also known as Turcopoles. Upon reaching Cairo, Amalric teamed up with Shawar's troops and departed to confront the Zengid army on its way. The two armies came face to face on the west bank of the Nile. Shirkuh was massively outnumbered by the Crusader Egyptian army, while the river acted as a barrier between the two opposites, at least for a while, until Amalric decided to cross the river and charge at the Zengid army. When this happened, Shirkuh knew there was no way he could fight such a colossal army on a plain land, so he retreated with his army until he reached Al-Babain. The valleys and rough terrains at Al-Babain restricted the movement and broke up the formation of the Frankish Egyptian army and gave Shirkuh's lighter, more mobile troops an advantage against the heavily armored Frankish knights. But it wasn't enough for Shirkuh and Saladin to deal with such a massive force. Shirkuh again came up with another tactical brilliance to negate the main strength of the Crusader army and their heavy cavalry charge. He positioned Saladin in the center of the line with orders to carry out a feigned retreat when the Crusaders charged. The plan worked. Amalric charged the Syrian center and Saladin pulled back. The Franks followed, leaving Shirkuh to deal with the rest of the Egyptian army. It was a complete catastrophe for the Egyptians. By the time Amalric returned, the situation was out of hand. From there, Shirkuh rushed with his battalion towards Alexandria, cutting through the opposition forces, leaving the Frankish Egyptian army stunned by this incomprehensible maneuver. Although Saladin's role in this battle was overshadowed by his uncle, it marked the beginning of his rise in the ranks that would ultimately make him the Crusaders' most formidable foe.